classes one more.
Maybe.
Yep.
6 minutes.
What?
6 minutes, I can hear.
Okay, great, yeah.
Actually, all the technical things
Everything
sorted out. Our screen,
our, YouTube running.
Our screen-
Going live to Facebook now.
our screen is paused, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a. Yeah, I didn't have a picture of him in the start of it.
Yeah, I did.
You
didn't
did?
get it?
Alright, well, I lapsed. I'm just using this at the time being.
Alright.
This
Alright,
one,
well, everything technically set.
actually, this picture, if you see the picture up on the screen is
Yeah, it's
I
not.
just pause it.
Yeah, a bad pause.
in the back.
It's a bad pause.
Yeah.
Tell us when to say cheese. Damien.
Hi.
Look. You're
Look
gonna
up
take
the
a
camera.
picture. Look at the camera.
Alright.
Yeah?
Okay, about 4 minutes.
Okay.
The boss called massive this morning and she complimented him. Yeah, that's what you need, yellow.
Oh,
It was on. That's what you
because I just got a message over here.
Yeah.
Okay, alright.
That's
Good afternoon, and welcome to the United National Congress's Zoom press conference for Friday, the 4th of June, 2021. Today, we will be speaking about very important issues facing the country, and we have MP Saddam Hussein, who is also the shadow for the Ministry of the Attorney General, and also Senator Damian Lyder, who is the shadow for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. We will start off by having each of the parliamentarians make their presentations, after which the Zoom will be opened up to the media to ask questions. So, without further ado, I will pass the microphone on to MP Saddam Hussein.
Thank you very much, Dr. Megu, PRO of the United National Congress. And I just want to welcome members of the media and all of those who are listening to us live over the various platforms. I hope that you all are keeping safe, especially in this pandemic time where the number of cases are continuously rising, which is a cause for much concern. Notwithstanding everything that is happening in the country, we have a duty as the opposition to ensure that we raise pertinent issues with regard to the management and accountability of a government. Because we are in a pandemic time, it doesn't mean that the government's duty to account to the population is suspended. It means that they should be more accountable to the population. And as you may be aware, on Tuesday of this week, the 1st of June 2021, the leader of the opposition wrote a letter to the chairman of the NCRHA, Mr. Steve Delas, and the chief executive officer, Mr. Davlin Thomas, raising issues regarding the legal authority for the NCRHA to manage and/or operate the Couva Hospital. Now, the leader of the opposition has advised that after consultation with the legal team of which I'm a part of the following two issues. One, that we will vigorously pursue all our legal options available to us for the NCRHA to produce to the nation their legal authority to manage and operate the Couva Hospital. Two, that we will refer the matter to the Commissioner of Police for an immediate criminal investigation into the operations of the NCRHA. And these are important because of the allegations of manipulation of data as stated by the Medical Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the Nurses Association to suit a particular narrative. The improper rotation of doctors, the attack on the competence of medical professionals who risk their lives every day in this fight against COVID, and the many allegations of corruption, wanton waste and mismanagement at the NCRHA. They are serious questions which the NCRHA has failed to answer. And the leader of the opposition letter that was issued on the 1st of June, today is Friday, up until this time of a press conference, we are still to receive an acknowledgement for that particular letter. And that letter contained in it gave a brief history of what transpired with the PNM's term in office regarding the Couva Hospital, when at first it was announced that a company called the Couva Medical and Multi-Training Facility Limited, which was incorporated on the 3rd of July, would be the company to manage the hospital. And based on that company being incorporated, Minister Imbert on the 1st of October 2018 in his 2019 budget statement indicated that the company will now manage the Couva Hospital, which is known as the Couva Medical and Multi-Training Facility. And it will be jointly owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the University of the West Indies. Subsequently, we heard confirmation from Professor Brian Copeland of the UWI that UWI will be a majority shareholder in this company. Now, based on the annual returns that were filed, the latest annual returns being the 26th of August 2020, there were only 10 shares issued for this company to manage the hospital. And those shares are all worth $10, so it's $1 per share. And when you look at the allocation of the shares, all 10 ordinary shares are being held by the Ministry of Finance, or what we know as Corporation Sole. So right now, the University of the West Indies has no ownership over that company that was announced in 2019 by the Minister of Finance. Then subsequently, the Couva Hospital was in fact converted into one of the central response by the government in the fight against COVID-19. This announcement was made on the 28th of February 2020 by Minister Dayal Singh, where he confirmed that the hospital will be used to house patients and currently is being used to house and treat COVID-19 patients. Now, when you look at the evidence, there's irrefutable evidence that the NCRHA is in full management of the Couva Hospital. Now, the NCRHA is, I'm going to get into the law. The NCRHA is set up by an Act of Parliament called the Regional Health Authorities Act, Chapter 2905. And this act establishes 5 of the RHAs, one being the NCRHA. Now, all the powers that the NCRHA can in fact exercise comes from within this particular piece of law. So therefore, they must operate only by the powers given to them by this particular law called the RHA Act. And Section 6 of that act would have outlined all of the duties of the RHA, in particular to provide efficient systems for the delivery of healthcare, to facilitate new systems of healthcare, to provide use of healthcare facilities for service, teaching, and research, amongst other things. But when you look at Section 3 of the Act, and when it's read with the first schedule of the Act, it demarcates boundaries for each of the RHAs. So the NCRHA was given specific municipal corporations in which it covers, because the RHAs are divided based on the boundaries of the municipal corporations. So the NCRHA has jurisdiction over the Tunapuna-Piako Regional Corporation, the Borough of Chaguanas, and the Borough of Arima. Now, where the Couva Hospital is situated, it is situated in the regional corporation of the Couva Tabakit Talparo Regional Corporation, which the SWRHA has jurisdiction for. Now, if the government's policy is for the NCRHA to operate and manage the Couva Hospital, an amendment needed to be made to the law by the Minister of Health by in fact laying in Parliament an order, and this particular order can extend the boundary of the NCRHA. Based on checks being done, we have yet to see that order, and we have asked the Leader of the Opposition in her letter, has asked a simple question to the NCRHA to please provide to the country the legal authority on which it is using to manage the Couva Hospital. The third schedule of the Act would have given all of the assets and the properties that are owned by the NCRHA in terms of medical facilities. The Couva Hospital has neither been transferred nor vested into the Couva Hospital. So again, we ask, what is the legal authority on which the NCRHA is operating the Couva Hospital? Then if the government's argument is that there's a partnership with the UE and this hospital is operating as, let's say, a private hospital, there's also an Act of Parliament that deals with private hospitals and it must be licensed. Can the minister in fact state whether or not that is the case? Because based on the RHA Act, as the Couva Hospital operating as a public facility, the necessary amendments to the laws were not made to allow the NCRHA to operate. And therefore, that is the question that we are asking. Please provide to us the legal authority on which this is being done. That is why a decision was taken by the Leader of the Opposition, as she has advised after consultation with her legal team, to pursue the following 2 issues: to vigorously pursue all our legal options available to us for the NCRHA to produce to the nation the legal authority to manage and operate the Couva Hospital, And secondly, to refer the matter to the Commissioner of Police for an immediate criminal investigation into the operations of the NCRHA, because we have seen all of the issues regarding what is taking place at the operations and management of the NCRHA, especially the attack on the senior staff at the Couva Hospital. So these are the very pertinent issues we wish to bring to the attention of the nation, especially at a time where these particular medical facilities are the central core in terms of the treatment, management of our COVID-19 patients who are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And we as an opposition want to ensure that those patients receive the best and proper health care and ensure that they have a speedy recovery, so therefore that they can rejoin our country and let us fight this virus together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Saddam Hussein, for that very important information that certainly needs to be acted upon. I now invite Senator Damian Lyder to present his contribution to this conference.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the members of the media for coming out today, ladies and gentlemen, and all the listening population here today. I say to you good afternoon and not such a good time. Today, it is my duty to address you with regard to some of the comments and rebuttals that were made by the Honorable Minister of National Security, Minister Fitzgerald Hines, where the minister sought to respond to some allegations regarding porous borders and an influx of Venezuelans coming in via fishing boat vessels and trade in Chagaramas, as well as the damning allegations of the breaking of curfew by these said fishing vessels during a time when the rest of the nation was shut down in the public holidays. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying that after witnessing 6 weeks ago an enthusiastic and energetic start to Minister Hines' career as a Minister of National Security, then suddenly a silence, an absence from the public eyes, having 4 different press conferences led by the Prime Minister of this country regarding the state of emergency and the curfew, and having a Minister of National Security who did not present, who did not speak, who has a stake in these matters of curfew and national security, being the Minister in charge of the protective services. It was indeed encouraging to see the Minister resurface and speak to the media on the issue I'm addressing today. The Minister's comments would have been reported on the Guardian newspaper on Wednesday, the 2nd of June, and he would have also been interviewed on TV6 by Disha Rambajan on that said day. It is only after reading the Guardian article and reviewing the comments and the contributions made on TV6 that the encouragement that I felt, and many in the nation who's commented on it, had turned to gross disappointment. Let me take this opportunity for those of you who did not listen to Minister Hines' response, and let me highlight some of the key points that he stated in his response on TV6 News. And if I may quote, "This nation was subject to listening to a minister discarding and trivializing a matter that appears to be urgent, significant, and potentially a great risk and a great health risk, especially to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, especially during a global pandemic and a pandemic that is ravaging through our nation today." In his interview on TV6, when questioned by reporter Disha Rambajan about the allegations of Venezuelan fishing vessels traversing up and down the shores of Trinidad and Tobago on Monday, the 31st of May, during Indian Arrival Day, while the entire country was locked down in a state of emergency, and a curfew that started from 10 a.m. in the morning, ending at 5 a.m. the following day. When the minister was asked about the allegations on these fishing boats, his immediate comment was that he did view the videos, and he didn't see a timestamp, so he wasn't sure of the date, did not know if it happened during COVID hours, did not even know it was recently. This reminds me of the response that I got from the former Minister of National Security when I highlighted other videos from October all the way to date. Firstly, I would like to say that if the minister had paid attention to the news report the day before by the investigative journalist, he would have heard the journalist tell the nation that independent citizens, independent eyewitnesses that were interviewed by the investigative journalists witnessed these boats traversing up and down the waters of Trinidad and Tobago after the 10 a.m. curfew lockdown. They indicated on that newscast, the independent investigative journalists indicated on that program that the eyewitness, amongst other eyewitnesses, saw the boats traversing after 11:15 and somewhere around 1:24 in the afternoon. Now, I would say that the minister indicated that he was responding today because he heard the cries of the citizens. So, Mr. Minister, if you heard the cries of the citizens, the cries of this eyewitness who spoke to the investigative journalist, shouldn't that be something to be taken serious? This is not the United National Congress coming and telling you. This is independent witnesses down the islands that saw the boats traversing back and forth. He then goes on to trivialize the matter of the Venezuelan vessels by stating it is nothing new. It is not unusual. It is a regular thing. And it has been going on for 3 decades. Well, I want to state to the Minister of National Security that I am a citizen from the Northwest Peninsula of Trinidad and Tobago. I've grown up in Diego Martin and I've traversed down the islands my entire life, for 44 years of my life. And I could tell you that this has not been going on for 3 decades. There may have been boats coming in at Hockley, but most certainly the numbers of boats that are coming in now today, sometimes 10 to 15 boats coming in on a daily basis, this has only been happening in the last 5 years, if that much, and it's been ramped up in the last 2 years. So it's not 30 years. The minister goes on to say that the Venezuelan vessels come in regularly and they bring ship for transshipment and export abroad. And I state this categorically because I'm sticking a pin here because I'm coming back to this. He goes on to say that customs and excise and immigration and Coast Guard are all part of the process. And I'm also sticking a pin here because I will come back to that. Minister Hine goes on to say that if it happened during the curfew hours, then I am satisfied that the current emergency and public health regulations accommodates that kind of activity as we speak to keep the food chain alive. Of course, it is permitted under these regulations. He goes on to say that those who raise the issue would have done so ignorant to this. So those of us in the UNC and those independent citizens, eyewitnesses, we are ignorant. Well, firstly, I would like to debunk the claims that these vessels contribute food to the food chain in our nation, because this contradicts what he said one paragraph before, where Minister Hines indicated that these Venezuelan vessels routinely bring fish for transshipment and export. This implies that this is not a part of our local food chain. Whilst all our citizens, our fisher folk, are in their homes during curfew, our local fishermen are in their homes during curfew, the minister states that he's satisfied that this follows the law. The minister says if it's happening in the curfew hours, he's satisfied that the current emergency and public health regulations accommodates this. Well, I don't know, I'm not aware if the Minister of National Security, being a lawyer, has taken the time to review the legal notice number 176 of 2021, Emergency Powers number 2, Regulations 2021, where it states here on section 14, notwithstanding Regulations 310 for the purposes of the public holiday on Monday the 31st of May 2021 and Thursday the 3rd of June 2021 during the hours of 5:01 a.m. to 10:01 a.m. on each day, only the activities and services permitted by Section A, Regulations 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7, B, Regulations 4.5, which is where fishing falls in the list of those exempted, and C, pharmacies. They shall be authorized to operate from 5 to 10. So, Mr. Minister, if you are satisfied that these boats are following the regulations during the curfew hours, then, sir, I recommend that you review the legal notice 176 that your government has agreed on and has passed as law during the 2 days of public holidays. I have it right here. It's right here. So you have a minister on record stating that he's satisfied that they are complying with the law. And anyone raises the issue is doing so in ignorance. So I put it to the Minister of National Security. Unless there is a lacuna in this law that the rest of the population is not aware of, I put it to you that you may be the ignorant one, sir. Because the rest of the country, including all pharmacies, supermarkets, local fishing folk, everyone was locked down and shut down in their homes after 10 a.m., sir. And all those persons in their island homes who witnessed and video recorded those Venezuelan vessels passing after in curfew hours when not a single other vessel, local or not, traversed. I say to you, sir, go back and check your regulations. Minister Hines, as a lawyer, not even understanding your own regulations as it pertains to the emergency and public health regulations, how are you not aware of the rules of the curfew, sir? You are the Minister of National Security in charge of this. I would further like to state that when these Venezuelan boats come in, they are not simply dropping off their cargo and leaving and staying on their boats. They are sailing past Tetron, the Coast Guard. They are coming in to the fisheries, which sit in between cruising power boats, coming into the national fisheries. They are docking at our jetties. They are throwing rope. They are jumping out on their boat and they are disembarking their boat, sir. And when they arrive in the country, no healthcare officials are meeting the boat at the jetty. There is no COVID-19 testing taking place. There is no quarantine. There is no immigration boarding the vessel, sir. This is happening in plain sight of all the citizens who are traversing in the Chagaramas area. I myself went down there this week and witnessed these boats pulling up to the jetties, sir. When is this government going to take this matter seriously? So I took the time and the effort, Mr. Minister, if you're not prepared to. I took the time and the effort to consult with a maritime professional, a lawyer, who deals with cargo vessels coming into our nation. So if I may just cite the following. The procedure for boats coming into Trinidad and Tobago is that usually all boats need an agent, a local agent, who will declare to Immigration, Customs and Excise the ETA, estimated time of arrival, the ETD, the estimated time of departure, how many persons will enter on the vessel, if possible a list of the crew, and to fill out all necessary documents pertinent to entering our country and approaching our jetties. On arrival, the master of the vessel is brought to the Office of the Immigration Division. In terms of the pandemic, a port health officer should be the first person boarding the vessel, followed by Immigration and Customs. The port health officer should be the first person to interact with the boat. Subsequently, the agent would then board. However, the process is much smoother if the agent accompanies the port health officer, as he has all the relevant information and documents, especially when the captain does not speak English, which is in most cases. The port health officer boards with the agent, checks to ensure there are no illnesses on board, does the testing for COVID-19, because we are in a pandemic currently. Regardless if Minister wants to say that this has been happening for 30 years, we are in a COVID pandemic where our borders are closed to both citizens of this country and foreign nationals, all persons. And the requirement to return to this country by our own citizens is to have negative PCR tests on one end, a negative PCR test on the next end, and then quarantine. So, Mr. Minister, I go on. Over the years, then after the health officials have given the all clear that there are no rats on the boat or animals that could be bringing to spread diseases on the boat, or that no one is tested for or is sick to bring in any form of virus inclusive of COVID, immigration then boards the boat. However, over the years, this has become the practice where immigration does not does the boarding for the North region. This aspect of the process ensures the vessel obtains something they call free pratique, which is basically the all clear for them to dock and for them to disembark in our country. Immigration handles this for Port of Spain. They would check the crew list to ensure that there are no undesirable persons on board. Everyone has visas if necessary. If you are not crew, which is exempt from visas, and you are a simple immigrant from Venezuela coming in, you need a visa. You need firstly an exemption, and you need a visa to enter our nation. I only have to look at NewsGov TT, where the implementation of visa requirements for Venezuelan nationals traveling to Trinidad and Tobago came into effect in June 17, 2019, right about when there were 16,500 Venezuelan immigrants, illegal immigrants, being registered by the past minister. It's right here. It states it. So if you are not a crew member, you have to have a visa. And we are seeing these boats coming in with sometimes 15 to 20 persons on a boat. Are they all crew members? Are they all deck staff, deck hands, captains? So I go on. Immigration would have to provide free pratique. That is only after all the health officials are given the all clear. They are given free pratique to disembark off the boat onto the jetties and so forth. They still have to go, when the boats are anchored, it makes the process smoother for all to embark together. But no individual on that boat should leave the vessel before obtaining free pratique. When you have locations like cruising, where it is set up for vessels to be moored all over in different places, then immigration and customs would have very little idea as to how many persons came on board. Crews may come in and may avoid having to go and pay all the expensive fees to customs and excise and immigration. We are finding out some of these Venezuelan vessels don't even have agents. So if there are persons disembarking, they would have to have their passport stamped. So even if you got free pratique to dock, to disembark and come out into our country, those passports of the crew members need to be stamped. However, the thing is with these boats out at sea, those persons are considered crew. They would have a seaman's pass and be considered fishermen. They would need to have papers to show that the boat is declared a worker boat and allowed to come and go, especially in the pandemic. So that is the question we need to ask ourselves. Do these fishing boats classify under this? If they are leaving Trinidad waters and they're going back into Venezuela, which we have seen them coming from Venezuela, there should also be an exemption for them to come into this country. Once you are out of our borders, you have to have an exemption. All ships that are coming in, their local shipping agents get exemptions for the boats that come in while our borders have been locked down. So they may not need visas, the crew and the captain, but they certainly need an exemption to come into this country, similar to all of our citizens who have been stranded out of the country for over a year. So I ask the question today, are shipping agents submitting documents to immigration? Are exemptions granted to vessels coming in from Venezuela? And have their vessels obtained free patique? Are Venezuelan nationals who are coming in, are they all crew members? Or if not, are visas being issued? I ask these questions to the minister. If you are not prepared to answer these questions, we think you need to be responsible and answer these questions. If you are not prepared to answer these questions, then we will have to instruct our lawyers to send a letter to you under the Freedom of Information Act to find out what is going on down in Chaguaramas. Because, Mr. Minister, we are seeing it in broad daylight. They're pulling up to the boats. And when they pull up to the boats, Minister, I repeat, no COVID testing, no quarantine, no immigration, no health officials. As I come to a close, I want to quote a witness who contacted me in my last interview. And his name is Mr. Gary Aboud, who is the corporate secretary of the Fishermen and Friends of the Sea. And if I may quickly read for you, he states, every day 20 or more Venezuelan vessels land their catch in Chaguaramas, and many are also landing in San Fernando. In Chaguaramas, each vessel has much more than 8 fishermen, while Coast Guard dictates the local vessels only obtain a maximum of 5. There was a time when these very vessels had to first berth in cruising, where there's a customs and immigration office, and documents would be stamped. But even then, immigration, health, and customs officers never boarded or inspected the vessels. Today, the procedure is much more willy-nilly, and anything goes because the very vessels go directly to 2 private jetties to upload their fish. Customs, immigration, and health inspectors are never present at either of those private facilities to verify any critical cross-border concerns. There is no evidence that any documentation is being verified. Freeness in a time when the new variant, yet Minister Hines seems to be clueless that we are in the midst of a pandemic. So, I say this as I bring this to a close. These are serious allegations at a time when our country is locked down due to this COVID pandemic, at a time when our businesses are shut, at a time when more than 150,000 persons are now on the breadline, at a time when our economy is in 8% decline in 2020 and expected to have a similar decline in 2021. At a time when we see more than 537 people dead to COVID-19 in this country, over 300 persons alone last month. At a time when we see more than 25,000 persons having been infected since March of last year. And in this country, are 9,817 active positive cases as of yesterday. When we see our family, our friends, our grandparents, our children dying of COVID-19, at a time when the Brazilian variant is raging through our country, and you, Mr. Minister, come to this nation in The Guardian on Wednesday and tell the nation that there is no scientific evidence to show the Venezuelan influx is causing the COVID-19 spread and the Brazilian variant. This is the Guardian article where you said that, sir. Mr. Minister Hines, do you live in the same country we do? Do you sit in the same cabinet as your colleagues? And do you sit mere seats away from the Minister of Health, who is on record on the 27th of April 2021? I sat in the Senate myself and I heard Independent Senator Paul Richards ask the question to the Health Minister when he asked on the Brazilian variant and how it entered our nation, which the Minister of Health is on record stating the first, and I quote, the first case of the P1 variant was found in a Venezuelan migrant. And only yesterday, in the St. Augustine laboratory, recorded 6 cases of the Brazilian variant. Do you not speak to your colleagues, sir? Do you not speak to the minister who delivers the scientific information to the population on a weekly basis? Yet you are satisfied that Venezuelan boats traversing in our waters during a curfew, during a lockdown, when people are afraid to come out of their homes from catching COVID, the possibility of dying, you are comfortable with that. You are satisfied with that. And finally, I want to remind this government and the Minister of National Security that it was his press conference 6 weeks ago, where in that press conference they admitted that there were over 125,000 illegal immigrants in this country and climbing. So when the government beats their chest on bringing in these vaccines, I hope the government is accounting for the 200,000 vaccines or more that will be necessary to vaccinate our illegal immigrants. And I hope the government can present to this nation a system and process in how they are going to do that, how they are going to find the ones that are hiding, how they are going to find the ones that are living 20 in a home in a shanty town in South, and if the taxpayers are going to pay for it. So in conclusion, this is not a time, Mr. Minister, to play politics with a dangerous situation like this. This is a time to apply humility and accept if a mistake has been made down in Chagaramas. This is a time to deal with the problem. Mr. Minister, it's in your hands. If you are satisfied that nothing is wrong in Chagaramas and the rest of the population is seeing it and everything is above board and going well, if you are not prepared to look into this matter with urgency, then Mr. Minister, you should be prepared to resign your post as the Minister of National Security, because you are clearly showing your inability to handle this job and to take serious allegations brought to you by eyewitnesses, by the media, and by the opposition. You refuse to take those seriously. So, Minister, the ball is in your court, and all those Venezuelan fishermen are in your court with that ball. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Lyda. Very powerful questions. And we will be opening up to the media soon, but there's one more issue that will be addressed by MP Saddam Hussein. So I will hand over the microphone to him at this time.
Thank you again, Dr. Mehu. There's one very important issue that I wish to raise again with the members of the media. We are in lockdown now for about 5 weeks, where the lockdown for non-essential workers began somewhere around the 30th of April of this year. Now, there are thousands of persons who were deemed as non-essential workers by the government. Now, why is this important? Because from the date in which the restrictions applied for non-essential workers to go to work, it meant that they stopped receiving a salary. Many of these non-essential workers are in fact low-income earners who would live paycheck to paycheck. How have they been able to sustain their families for a period of 5 weeks without a single dollar in their pocket? We have been locked down so long now, 5 weeks, state of emergency, and yet every day we see hundreds of positive infections of COVID-19 and many deaths. The government must have a plan, as called for by the leader of the opposition earlier, that they must have a plan to ensure that non-essential workers are able to earn again. What is the plan? You cannot lock down a country without a plan for those who are most vulnerable. While we understand that hampers may be given, a hamper can only last so long. They must be given the opportunity to earn. As Senator Lyda mentioned earlier on, what is the sense that you have locked down the borders, locked down the citizens of this country, yet the illegal borders remain open? And we, as the opposition, will continue to fight for those in society who are being negatively affected and impacted the most by these new restrictions. We will fight for them. because they are the persons in this country who play a valuable role in the economy. And to have them suffer, there are many persons who are suffering right now. They are unable to pay rent, to buy groceries, to pay their mortgages. There are so many persons suffering. I can tell you from my constituency that many persons contact my office on a daily basis to ask for assistance because they are not able to just afford simple things like food. We have to ensure that we take care of these people. The opposition leader has called again to work with the government, to work with all other stakeholders to devise a plan in which we must get these essential workers back to work. We must allow them to earn. You cannot lock down without a plan, and that is what exactly this government is doing. The Keith Rowley government is being advised by persons who earn salaries every month. They have a salary to look forward to. But the persons who bear the brunt of this lockdown the most are those non-essential workers who are unable to earn and unable to provide for their families. So I call again, and I'm echoing the call of the leader of the opposition, for the government to work with the opposition, work with the business sector, work with all other stakeholders to ensure that there's a proper plan to get these essential workers back out to work. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MP Saddam Hussein and Senator Damian Lyder. We now open the floor up to the media via Zoom. And I will start off with Alicia Boucher from TV6. Hello, Alicia.
Hi, good afternoon. So we know that the Cuba Hospital, it has been functioning underneath the NCRHA for more than a year now. And I want to ask, because allow me to play devil's advocate here, isn't it playing politics now that just that this issue has arisen in rotation, in as it relates to rotation, that the opposition is now bringing these legal matters forward in terms of the governing or the management of the Cuba Hospital being under the NCRHA, as opposed to, let's say, a year ago? Why wasn't that brought forward to the public's attention? That's my first question.
Alicia, if you would look at the law, you would realize that the order has to be laid in the Parliament. One, the Parliament hasn't sat for some time. Secondly, that notwithstanding the matter has been raised last year or raised this year, it all goes back to the legality of the actions of the NCRHA. Therefore, they now have a duty to respond to indicate why the necessary orders were not put in place for them to have jurisdiction over the Cuba Hospital. And now we are seeing it, how glaring it is with respect to the mismanagement of what is taking place at the Cuba Hospital, especially with the rotation of staff that is being done, especially with respect to having the reputation of very senior medical professionals being questioned. So those are some of the issues that must be addressed by the NCRHA. So notwithstanding the issue was not raised last year or this year, at the end of the day, there's a duty for the NCRHA to now account to the population what legal authority they are acting under in order to operate the Cuba Hospital.
You had a second question I could allow you, and then we will go to our subsequent question.
Okay, can I just ask a follow-up question? MP Hussein, based on your knowledge of the law, because I wouldn't have as much knowledge as you as it relates to law, what are the legalities that we are looking at in terms of this issue? I know that you have referred you plan to refer the issue to the police. What are we looking at in terms of the legalities and the fallout of that?
Now, when you look at the RHA, any action done by an RHA must be done within the remit of the law, within the confines of the law. So therefore, if the NCRHA is acting without legal authority, it will mean that some of the things that they have done may not be in accordance with the law. Therefore, some of the actions that the NCRHA may have taken will in fact be illegal. We are asking whether or not that the government is in a position to declare to the country what is the legal authority that the NCRHA is acting on to operate the Cuba Hospital, and whether or not the government has a duty now to validate the actions of the NCRHA that was necessary You would remember various pieces of legislation were brought to the parliament when things were not properly constituted. For example, when there was a mix-up with the election dates in the Tobago election, they had to validate those actions. When there was issues relating to various licenses that were issued by the magistrates court, they had to issue validation acts. So we have to look at whether or not now the government has to take corrective action to fix the illegality that may have stemmed from the absence of the legal authority for the NCRH to manage the hospital.
Okay, thank you, MP Hussain. We have another question from Priya Bihari from AZP News. Priya?
Hi, good afternoon, Priya Bihari, AZPnews.com. My first question is for Senator Leiter. Senator, the Minister of National Security did speak about 15 beaches, he said, that were being monitored by the police. I'm not sure if any in the Chaguaramas area was being monitored because he didn't state. Therefore, are you calling maybe for more security, more monitoring and patrols by not only the police but the Coast Guard in that area? And also, I mean, what the National Security Minister said, that if someone comes in too selfish as usually do you think that they have a legitimate right to do that once they observe all of the COVID-19 protocols?
Okay, I didn't hear the last part of your question. Let me answer the first part of your question, and then if you could repeat the last part of your question for me, because I didn't hear it very well. But in the first part of the question, he indicates 15 points. We haven't had any updates whether or not these points have already been set up and established already. In fact, we've heard nothing about it other than the fact that the minister stated on TV6 News that they are continuously working towards improving the security on the border by implementing various systems and so forth. So to me, it's like a dance around where we are not seeing anything happening. We are not seeing pictures. We're not seeing evidence. We're not seeing army in action, setting up camps. And he speaks of 15 entry points, but we know there are more than 80 entry points. So whether or not Chaguaramas is indeed one of those pointed at 15, we're not aware, because if you go down to Chaguaramas now, you will not see any form of any independent exercise that has been put in place by the minister after his claims. What we are calling for is a security dome, advising a security dome to protect our borders, sea, land, and air, not a physical dome with concrete and steel, as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago jokingly stated in a campaign, where we are doing exactly that. We are setting up points, base points at porous areas in the country, whether in the northwest or south or whatnot. We are ensuring that there are health officials, customs and excise, military. We ensure that we have vessels that are working. I mean, this week when we went down the islands, we saw all the vessels parked up in the bay. About 12 of the Dayman vessels parked up, and the one Chinese vessel parked up, not patrolling, not doing anything. We're not seeing any sign of this level of patrol by the Coast Guard to create that dome in the water. No bases being set up. And we hear about the radar, but we're not seeing anything about the radar. So honestly, if whatever you're seeing is, we and the citizens are seeing the same thing. What was your second part of the question?
It is if these boats came in, with legitimate means. They have a right to come in, because they always do this, and once they observe the protocols, is there still something wrong with that?
We are not advocating, we are not against those fish processing plants that are doing commerce in the country. We are not against international trade with Venezuela. But what we are saying is that there is a public health ordinance. Our borders have been shut. There are rules and regulations that the government has implemented during this time of a pandemic. We are now in a state of emergency. We now have curfew. And I'm saying to you that if they follow all the protocols, which includes getting their exemptions, for their crew and their vessel to come into our waters, that when they arrive, that a health official boards the ship to ensure that no one is coming in that is infected with the Brazilian variant or any form, or soon to be possibly the Indian variant, which we're now told by the president of Venezuela is now ravaging through the southern part of Venezuela. So we expect that the Brazilian variant may be on our shores if we don't plug our borders. But once they follow all those protocols, once immigration, customs and excise are indeed included in the process, then I, myself, nor any citizen of this country should have a problem with the vessels coming in, bringing fish and trading. There's no issue with that. But what we are seeing is a blatant disregard for these processes down in Chaguaramas. We are witnessing on a daily basis the vessels that are coming in through the Gran Boca, obviously from Venezuela coming in, and they are sailing directly up to the jetties of the fisheries, and there is no evidence of health officials, customs, excise, immigration coming in. So when you see boats with 15 to 20 persons on it, when Coast Guard has indicated you should only have 5, and you see 20 persons, and then you see the boats going back out with 4 or 6, that should beg the question, what's going on down in Chaguaramas? So it's process rather than the activity of trade.
I believe MP Hussein, you have something to add.
Yeah. So with respect to the question that Alicia would have asked earlier, with regards to the criminal investigation that we're going to call for with respect to the operations and management of the NCRHA, we have to look at whether or not the interference by the CEO and the board of the NCRHA did in fact result in a lower standard of healthcare that were given to the COVID-19 patients at the Couva Hospital, and whether or not the lower standard of care may have led to some deaths. And as a result, that is what the allegation was being made by the Medical Association and the Nurses Association, that whether or not the board or the CEO is manipulating statistics for a particular narrative, to suit a particular narrative where which is in fact affecting the lives and the care that are being given to the COVID-19 patients. And is it death by a gun and death by a stroke of a pen? What's the difference? These are some of the actions that must in fact be investigated, because at the end of the day, persons are losing their lives. And there must be a strict and proper and comprehensive expedient investigation to determine what is really taking place with respect to the NCRHA and their interference at the Couva Hospital.
Thank you, MP Hussein. We have another question from Nadaline Singh from Caribbean Lifestyle Communications 97.1, 90.5, 104.1. And her question can be directed to either of the panelists. What is the UNC's position concerning the reports about Pfizer vaccines and the claims by the businessmen that someone brought in Pfizer illegally? Does anyone have like to answer?
I think the Commissioner of Police already made a comment on that issue, and that is within the Commissioner of Police's remit in terms of his investigation. If that is in fact so, it would show that the government has fallen down on this vaccine procurement issue. At the end of the day, vaccines are the solution, and the government has in fact been very lax in terms of the procurement of vaccines, and there must be a real policy put in place for inoculating the population, while at the same time devising a plan to go forward with respect to the economy and this current lockdown, and taking care of our non-essential workers, at the same time properly managing our healthcare facilities.
Thank you. I see Alisa Boucher has her hand up. Do you still have another question, or did I neglect to take that down from your previous question?
Okay, so my last question is for MP Salim Hussein again. MP, I heard you say you call for a plan in terms of allowing non-essential workers to earn money. You said that, you know, the hampers, they're all well and good, but they're not adequate in terms of it wouldn't suffice in the long run. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to something that Agriculture Minister Clarence Rambarat said the other day in relation to the NAMDEVCO issue. He stated that you had not submitted your full 600 names for persons within your constituency to be able to access these food hampers. Can you give us an update on that and tell us, if you have not, what are the challenges you are having in doing so?
Yeah, Minister Rambarat is a politician, and he's clearly playing politics with this issue. For the month of May, I have distributed 600 NAMDEVCO hampers to the constituents of Barataria San Juan. And on Monday, I have another scheduled 100 hampers again for those constituents. What Minister Rambarat sought to do was muddy the issue that I have raised with respect to the distribution of the hampers, in terms of how was it that NAMDEVCO hampers, which form part of the state assets, because it's over $30 million being paid for these hampers, ended up in the hands of a failed PNM candidate who runs an NGO in Couva North, where there's actually a sitting MP. So that was the issue I have raised. And just to settle Minister Rambarat's mind, because clearly he doesn't understand, or he's unaware of what is happening under NAMDEVCO, which is a state enterprise under him as a minister. Minister Rambarat, I have in fact received my 600 hampers. I have lobbied for the extra 200 that you almost denied the constituents of Barataria San Juan. We received those hampers, and yet again we will continuously get hampers through the following weeks, as indicated to my office through the NAMDEVCO.
Okay, let me see. Are there any other questions from the media at this time? If not, all right, we'd like to thank you very much for your attendance, for viewing, and I'd like to thank the parliamentarians here for raising these important issues. Thank you once again. Have a very, very good afternoon, and please be safe. Thank you.